to the show with your friend and mine. So tell me, Dr. Squee, who's it gonna be this time? We like to hear you talk, and we love to hear you listen. And if you are not subscribed, you won't know what you're missing. So welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. Headphones up. Here we go.
Hello and welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. I'm Dr. Squee and this here is my show. Now, first of all, apologies to anyone who tuned in for this interview yesterday and heard me rambling for about 10 minutes while I waited for a guest who wasn't coming. It's not the guest's fault, it was mine. I completely mixed up the days. We'd originally set this up for yesterday and then we moved the days. And so, of course, I set the stream up for the wrong day because, you know, professional. But anyway, we will never mind that now. To intro this next guest, I'm actually going to speak a bit about my personal experience of lockdown and how it all began with the COVID virus. When it all began, I can't remember when exactly I heard the news and heard it being first uttered on the news about this kind of like strange thing which is happening far off in the world and never was going to affect us. But I was working in Southampton City Council at the time. And one day they said to us, it's like, right, okay, we've already been working on ways of people working from home a bit more. We're going to test everyone working from home on this Monday and like see how it does. And we were all like, yeah, okay, sure, you know, like this is ever going to be a thing. Obviously very, very much contingency planning. Within a week we were all working from home, and because I then changed jobs, I never worked a full week in that office again. I came in a couple of days to help out with some things, but I just remember this kind of this sense of like a thing which just crept up on you and suddenly became very real. And I say all this because the documentary we're here to talk about tonight really recaptures that feeling for me. Now it's Last Call, the Shutdown of New York City Bars, and it is, as the name would suggest, about the shutdown of New York City bars. However, given that it talks about those moments during the COVID crisis where we all felt, I think this is a wonderful thing that you're going to enjoy. And even though it's kind of specifically about one thing, it can be generally applied to all of us and our experiences of the COVID situation, whatever you like to call it. Anyway, look, I've rambled for enough now. Let's welcome on the director and producer of this film, Johnny Sweet. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Doc. Thanks for having me, and I really appreciate your Star Trek memorabilia behind you.
Yeah, I've got a bit of geekery in the background there.
I was just gonna say The Wrath of Khan is one of my favorite movies ever. So you know, I appreciate it.
In a very weird way, that actually links into the beginning of lockdown for me as well, because the last thing we did days before they shut everything down and no shows would happen again, we saw William Shatner introducing The Wrath of Khan in London. Every other day after it got cancelled, he was even very cockly in his speech at the beginning, saying, it's like, do you know what? Look, I know we're all worried about this virus and everything, but I've never had to cancel a show before. I never get ill. Everything will be fine. 2 days later, everything got shut down.
Oh, well, that's a hell of a segue.
Not even Shatner could stop this virus. Anyway, as I say, I really love the hell out of this documentary. Thank you very much for sharing it with me prior to this interview. First of all, let's start with this. How are you doing this far into the pandemic yourself? How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I've been lucky in that sense. You know, didn't contract the virus. None of my close family members did. We were able to stay safe, and in that way, working through it was challenging and a little scary at times because we were outside in, you know, kind of Breaking Bad looking outfits filming. But as long as you know, as long as my wife was safe and protected, my family members were, and our interview subjects were, that's really all that mattered to us. So,
of course, I mean, that's something which I want to start with. What I loved about the way this documentary gets you into it, even before we start talking about the subject through the documentary, the setup is that you're filming everything remotely. That's put right in there on Front Street on the documentary, and you showed the remote ways in which you had the studio all kitted out. No one's in there apart from the interview subject, and the cameras are operated remotely. How was it setting that up? Were you geared for that? Did you know how to do all that going in, or was there a lot of learning on the job with that?
That is the genius of Brian Brousseau and HSC TV, their production company. They designed all that. That's all 1,000,000% credit to them. You know, I had a relationship with them dating back to my days at ESPN and also the Ron Artest film for Showtime. So I knew what they were capable of, and they're capable of extraordinary things. And they were able to design that setup and keep our interview subjects safe.
That's fantastic. And just what was the first thing which made you think that you want to handle the pandemic at all? Like, you know, you've got him right at the beginning here. There must have been some sort of spark right from early on. And why through the lens of the New York City bar shutdown?
Well, it was local for me. It was right outside our door. You know, ambulances were flying by our apartment basically every 5 to 10 minutes. We're right near the two hospitals that got hit the hardest, you know, arguably in the country. So it was right in front of us. I also, the industry I thought of outside of my own, right when this all started, was the hospitality industry, because I worked at a bar for 4 years in college, and some of my best friends in the world are still, you know, from those days at Conrad's up at Syracuse. So I just imagined, you know, thousands of those small, you know, bar-like communities just all being, you know, basically they're all laid off on the same day. And I thought it was important that they had a voice, and we were lucky enough to find Jenna, who we felt was a very strong voice to, you know, and also obviously her co-workers and friends who could describe what it was like for, you know, this industry at, you know, in real time, what we were going through.
Yeah, Jenna Ellenwood, I believe it is, from your documentary, and one of the places we kind of center around quite a lot is Sparrow's Tavern in the documentary. I just love the fact that, and again, you introduced the kind of feeling of this. I love the fact that they all at once, like in their separate interviews, said, look, I don't want to say it's like Cheers, but it's like Cheers, you know, and everyone went straight to that metaphor, which again, you hit my sweet spot because I grew up with that show and that's my favorite sitcom of all time. But I think everyone can relate to Jenna and to what it's like to have that local tavern such as Sparrow's Tavern. I grew up in a small town called Romsey, just down the road from Southampton, where I am now, and just in any town, in any city, in any village, there is that place. Why did Sparrows particularly appeal to you, and how did you find Jenna?
I found Jenna through a mutual friend of mine from my hole in the wall bar in Brooklyn. Our friend Kate McMurdo, who I knew through my friends at this small establishment local bar called Angry Wade's in Brooklyn on Smith Street. You know, Kate is a good friend of mine, and when I was, you know, telling her the kind of film that we were trying to potentially do, she said, I know someone perfectly for that. And that's how, you know, she put me in contact with Jenna. And then, you know, Jenna and I had a safe outdoor freezing meeting in Astoria Park by the East River. You know, I told her, I was 100% transparent with her. I said, this is what we're going to try and do. And, you know, think it over for a little bit to see if you're comfortable, and let us know how you feel. And she felt comfortable with us right away. And that, you know, the story arc, you know, grew from there.
And did she help you kind of link up with the other bars? Because I know kind of a lot of these bars, as much as they're in competition, there's a sort of like a sibling rivalry between them sometimes.
She did. She could not have been more of an amazing, not only interview subject, but teammate for the film. You know, her coworkers, and then her former coworker, who she's still close with, Nick, who runs Diamond Dogs, and another character, Willie, worked at Diamond Dogs. So they were kind of like sister bars in a way, or brother bars. I don't know what the actual correct terminology would be there. I'm probably messing that up. Sorry, Jenna.
We'll go sibling.
Yeah,
bars,
yeah. There is an alcohol relation business wise between the two of them, because Nick used to work there. So yeah, that's how the domino effect really started with Jenna, and then as far as the frontline workers, the hospital staff, that a good friend of mine named Amy Dash, who is a radio reporter in New York City, put me in contact with people that she knew, and that's, you know, 1,000,000% credit to her for building that bridge. So that's how we were able to do that. And then my wife, who is a professor at Stony Brook, is, you know, is very highly knowledgeable in the mental health arena. That's her specialty. So she found, you know, our social worker, Gail, who is in this. So really, it was these people all built the bridges that helped create this story arc.
I tell you, I mean, it's really hard to, it's like when you talk about 9/11 and firefighters, it's hard not to have an emotional sting. The second you talk about any of the medical first responders to the COVID crisis, I sort of like that. I'm sure there's a question in here, but I'm going to say as a statement and then do with it what you will. It is amazing to me that these people who are working more hours than they're on the day, it feels like, working on the pandemic crisis, then are so giving of their time for a documentary such as this. And I'm so thankful they were, because their stories need to be told. What's it like working with those people at such a time?
They were poised. They were, you could tell they were still running on kind of tunnel vision when they were, you know, talking to us. They were clearly in rhythm to the task at hand of what they were doing. That's the sense that I got from them. You know, just very strong backbone people that, thank God, those were the kinds of individuals who were out there day in and day out trying to, you know, bend the curve of New York City. And it's a credit to them and their diligence.
And something I've sort of touched upon before, was there an awareness to you that this story was going to chime with so many others? Again, like you're talking about the bars in New York City. This could have been the office workers of Southampton, England, as far as I'm concerned. This could have related to so many people.
Yeah, I'd say we were trying to make a film that anybody who has ever either worked at a bar, a restaurant, the hospitality industry, or owns a small business, works at a small business. There's millions of employees and, you know, and people like that around the world who identify with that at either now or in a certain moment in their lifetime. So we felt that we had a wide net of who we could touch with this story arc.
No, it's beautiful. And did you always have the structure in place, the idea of the structure, how it ended up? Because it felt like really, and I genuinely, I'm sort of glad I watched it on a good day, is what I'll say. It's like, not that it's not a wonderful and very warm documentary, but because it took me through the stages of the pandemic myself. Like, 1 minute we're going through what it's like to suddenly have this thing happen to you, like I was describing me in that office. Then you've got the kind of reality setting in, then you've got the worry for your friends and family, you've got the lockdown projects. It all seemed to follow those same stages we all went through during the pandemic and lockdown.
I mean, I usually don't do what you would call a preset story arc plan. I try not to box myself in journalistically. You know, I knew I wanted to introduce these, you know, these cast of characters as the kind of family that they are. I wanted people to get to know them before we entered into, you know, what we all entered into. Other than that, it was really all about reading and reacting to situations and seeing how it flowed within the telling of the story. So as long as we were journalistically 100% intact, that's really, you know, and our loyalty to the story being 100%, that's really all that mattered to us.
I mean, I think it's a wonder when any documentary filmmaker touching on a kind of sensitive subject doesn't get pulled into it. But you're literally experiencing it at the same time. You know, you might not be owning a bar, but, you know, you're experiencing the same kind of conditions everyone is, experiencing the same fear. How's that to go into work every day and do that when you're kind of experiencing the fears first person and third person and being able to detach yourself?
You know, I felt comfortable most of the time because Jenna was very diligent in, you know, basically disinfecting her apartment all the time when I went over there with my, you know, with my equipment. And then also we would, if it was above 40 degrees, we would shoot upstairs on the roof, which we knew outdoors at that time was technically safer, you know, to be around people a little more. So I felt okay there. Filming outside Elmhurst was a little stressful. but you know, my background is a high stress background in terms of, you know, we work in sports and rap music, and those are high stressful times. So I was kind of already used to filming in high stressful areas. You know, I'm not comparing the Super Bowl to dealing with COVID. That's obviously not a genuine comparison at all. But in terms of dealing with stress on the job, you know, we were all pretty trained in that lane. So I think we were all right. But definitely filming outside the hospital during the peak. You know, I had a long range lens on, and again, a Breaking Bad outfit on at the same time with like multiple rubber gloves on. I could barely hit record, but that would be the only, that and hearing the sirens constantly all the time was definitely anxiety ridden. The sound of the sirens, I would say, was probably the most stressful part, because you're hearing it all the time. And the second I would walk outdoors, just honestly to film in the neighborhood, I didn't really have to chase ambulances. They were like they were every block, you know. So those are probably the most stressful moments.
Now, I'm going to do an awful job because I'm rubbish with names, I'll be honest with you. But we were talking about the lockdown projects, and one of my favorites was the rap artist who also worked in the bar. He was absolutely amazing.
Oh, Willie, yeah, he's the X Factor.
Yeah, we need more. We needed more. I'm gonna point out the one flaw in this documentary. It's the only one. We needed more rap music, and like, considering he's right there, you could have put a couple of tunes in there.
Yeah, but then, you know, to those who know the industry, there's this thing called music licensing, and you know, our budgets were obviously annihilated during this time period, so we had to work with what we had. But he was great.
Subject, though, he wasn't going to give you mates rates. Come on.
No, we had permission to use the clips, you know, and the music that was in there. So we did okay by him there. But in terms of like his whole album and playing his whole album and stuff like that, we just, you know, we didn't want to use it for free. That would have been, you know, insulting to him. And, you know, and we didn't have the budget to license the whole album, you know, the 2 albums that he made. But we're glad we were there. You know, we're glad we were around when he was making them. So.
I mean, that's one of my favorite things. Sorry, obviously, I am joking. Of course, I do understand all that. But I think one of my favorite parts of the lockdown, you know, obviously there was a lot of things not to like about the lockdown and about this whole situation, but it was all the artistic projects which came out of it. You're there as a documentarian, which of course this artistic project, and you get all these people who suddenly their creativity is coming out when, as much as they might miss their work and love their work, those things came to the fore. So like you had Jenna doing that wonderful cocktail YouTube channel. So can you talk a bit more about those projects as well?
Yeah, I mean, they had these, you know, everybody had time to do something. And if you don't use that time, you know, creatively, you know, you start feeling bad that you wasted that time, but also at the same time, people are dying around you while you're trying to utilize this time. So it was really like this dual symbolism that played with, you know, Jenna and Willie's emotions, because, you know, they're trying to use this time to pursue their, you know, the arts that they're invested in, when usually they didn't have the time to do that because, you know, they had to work their jobs. So it was interesting to see them both go gung ho and use this time period to have what Willie called, which I thought was a great point. He said he called it an art attack, not a heart attack, but an art attack. And you just had to get these artistic expressions out of your system and to feel that sense of creative accomplishment in order to stay sane during this period of isolation.
And I noticed that a lot of the footage which you do kind of give a timeline later on in the film of what happened next, but a lot of it's from earlier on in the pandemic. Again, was that kind of a purposeful choice, or was that just, you know, you were set to film for this many days, so then we'll kind of like capture up the rest of the story in a kind of like a clip sort of basis?
Some of it was, you know, news footage that we licensed. Some of it was, you know, New Rochelle isn't that far from us. So that was just a matter of driving up there 20 minutes. And, you know, that was the other thing. The streets were empty. So we could drive all around New York with no traffic. It was as if someone licensed the entire city to shut it down to shoot a car commercial in all 5 boroughs. It was insane. You could drive around almost all over the city and there's just no traffic. So we were able to get to certain spots pretty quickly in order to film certain areas that pertain to, you know, the timeline. So that's an example of, you know, it's being easy to just fly right up to New Rochelle and film outside of young Israel and the purple ribbons that are still there today, actually.
But what I was trying to get at was that in the mainstay of the film, it's set around those kind of earlier months of the pandemic. Was that kind of something you always had in mind to do?
Well, we started in March, so, you know, we were, that was the real aggressive rise of the epicenter. So, I mean, we started at that time. So the only thing we could do was follow along with, you know, what was happening. Yeah.
And the thing I particularly loved about this documentary, but it seems like a choice, is to go. I mean, obviously, it was always going to be mainly through the eyes of the people affected and the kind of like individual stories. But you seem to kind of throw in clips of the politics, but not go into that. Why did you make that choice not to kind of go down that route as well?
Because we're making a sequel that deals with that. So. That's part of the reason.
Plugging now?
I don't mean to, but yes, we are working on a sequel. We're working on a sequel that deals with the state politics that were part of the reason why, you know, this industry was unfairly treated. So, you know, the industry that sacrificed the most outside of the frontline hospital workers were not given a lane to help build their lives back up at all by the state. And we will obviously, you know, in the next film, we speak with politicians, other bar owners, and also hospitality groups that have been formed in response to themselves not being protected during that time period. And we will hopefully try and effectively show that the cause and effect of politics on the industry.
Wow, that's amazing. And I completely respect the decision to sort of separate those two off, because they do seem like, I feel like if you hadn't had any clips of politicians talking, it would seem amiss. But you kind of covered it enough while keeping to the, so it felt like the remit of this story was to talk to those people in the bars.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure the focus of this film was the humanizing focus with this group. If we had started going off in other tangents with the politics that were going on in real time, I thought that might distract and make this more of like a Wikipedia kind of film, which we always try to avoid. So, but there is definitely a very important, strong story there to tell, and that's what we are working diligently on, actually, with the sequel.
So, oh, fantastic. Yeah. I'm glad I chanced upon that. Sorry, I wasn't being sarcastic about the plugs.
No, that was a softball pitch that you didn't even realize was a softball pitch. So you got right in there. So
I like it. And I mean, it was one question which I had, and maybe you kind of addressed this more in the sequel, was how did obviously the people talked in general about how they felt let down about the response, but obviously during the pandemic, we had a change of presidents in the United States of America and a very vast change of direction. I don't know if people still feel kind of left in the cold or not, but was there any kind of feeling of politics in it for the people?
Yeah, there's a very strong resentment for the most part with New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. It's there. It's very, very real, very visceral, and some react in ways that are, I'll give you an example. There's a Staten Island bar in New York called Max Public House, and they made a lot of headwaves by creating their own autonomous zone outside their bar and refusing the closing, and it led to a confrontation with the New York City Sheriff's Department, and there was a mass protest outside of their bar by the people who, that was their local spot. That was their place of escape, their extended living room. They love those guys. And whether you condone what they did or not, taking away one's right to work and feed their family is going to cause people to react in different ways, and that's one of the things that we will, you know, be addressing in the follow-up film.
I mean, it was endlessly fascinating to me as it is, the people who managed to through all this and seeing their industry dying essentially, you know, and no guarantee of how it's going to survive this, still putting safety first. Like, I don't put anything against anyone who chooses to say that, like, they feel let down, that they're putting this pandemic ahead of their business. For me, it's always about the safety first. And to hear these people who are saying, it's like, no, I've been given permission now to open up again, I'm going to wait until it's safe. How do you not fall to pieces when you hear a story like that, to be frank?
Well, even worse than that is the rules kept changing every week. When there was partial reopen, then semi-partial reopen, but then the state kind of made the bartenders and the bar managers COVID officers, saying, like, making them, you're requiring them to test on site when that's not what there's no training for that. So they're putting responsibilities that technically from a legal standpoint might not be, you know, okay. So, you know, the expansion of bureaucracy was also a big issue. The state liquor authority in New York has been a problem for a lot of these people. And yeah, it's the little guy getting stepped on, and they're not being bailed out by the government, such as how the banks were, and the airlines and the oil industry. So, you know, when is it gonna be time to bail out the little guys that, you know, really, especially in New York City, the little guys are responsible for, especially in the hospitality industry, they're responsible for $46 billion worth of business in, you know, one of the greatest cities in the world. So we're hoping in the future that, you know, they don't get stepped on continuously again. But they're trying to fight back. They're trying to organize. It's tough because everybody's an individual business, and uniting under one umbrella is very tough to organize, especially, you know, even as a lobbying group or whatever. So we're hoping that with these films that it gets the message out. Let's stop stepping on the little guys for once. Can we,
Yeah.
you know, so.
I mean, yeah, the amount of parallels, again, which I drew from this documentary for my friends in the arts who have been just in this country just forgotten. They even during the pandemic started to put out posters and adverts saying they had a picture of a young girl as a ballerina. She doesn't know it yet, but her next job's as an accountant, and like all these kind of better jobs which people in the arts could stop wasting their time on this and do something bit more sensible. And I just felt all those feelings about these people in these bars who just got forgotten by the government. Something which I wanted to say was a lovely touch at the end of your documentary, and the perfect way to go out on it. You've just gone through this kind of heartbreaking hour worth of seeing these people really struggle and the hope which they managed to pull out of it, all these other emotions. And then the end is just two women on a rooftop talking about getting laid in the pandemic and dating at this time. Genius for a start, but how did you choose that as your way to go out of the documentary?
Well, I didn't know where to put it because it didn't make sense in the arc of the film. So we were like, you know, we did a post-credit scene in our last film that worked out well, our last film for Showtime. So we were like, you know, why not do it again here? This makes sense. So we honestly just put it in so that there's at least some sort of comedic relief or exhale for the audience, you know, to have as if they're sticking around through the credits. So
I think we needed it. It was a lovely documentary, but we needed that at the end, and it was just perfect.
Well, credit Molly and Jenna for that freestyle conversation, because I don't script anything, so that's all them.
I mean, for a decent documentary, you've got to have those real moments. It just completely takes me out of it when it is scripted, when it is more kind of like we're going to go A, B, C. When you have those real moments, that's what really lifts the documentary for me. So I thought it was perfect. Have you checked in with Jenna and all the crew since?
Yeah, we've been going through the film festival circuit, and you know, I see them semi-consistently. So, you know, they seem to be doing a little better. Diamond Dogs has reopened, so Nick is back in business, and he's grown his hair out real long, and you know, he looks like a lost member of Zeppelin. But you know, they seem to be at least partially getting back to some sense of normalcy, which is great to see.
And it's just about to hit VOD, I believe.
What was that? I'm sorry.
The doc's just about to hit video on demand, I believe.
Yes, I believe August 13th is the day of our full digital on-demand release. If I have that wrong, if I have that wrong, Lisa, I'm sorry. So.
Before we move on, just quickly, just your next project that you're working on the moment. So is it just the sequel that you're going for with the politicians, or have you got any other things you're ever working on?
Well, I'm back in sports. The industry that's been back open, so been doing a lot of work in that lane. Same in the rap music lane. So I'm back in those areas, but we are aggressively trying to hopefully have this follow-up film done before winter. So that's what we're aggressively pursuing right now, is the follow-up to Last Call.
Fantastic. And I know this is completely gauche of me, but you're more in my background. I can't help but notice your little friend, the Emmy, in the background there.
Oh, that, if you are able to look closer, it's actually broken. So, yeah, when you move a lot at time, you know, when you do a cross-country move twice in 5 years, sometimes things break. So, but yeah, it's there. It's really heavy, and the wings are sharp. So, yeah. No, but
this is what I love about documentary makers. Other people would be all over that. It's like, yes, I want it for this, that, and the other. You're like, it's chipped in the move. It's very heavy. There's wings there.
Well, I'm in this business for the storytelling. If the awards come, that's great. I couldn't be happier. It's like an added bonus. But for me, it's the storytelling, process of why I'm going to try and stay in this field as long as I can.
Of course, and I shouldn't tarnish it by mentioning such awards. It's an absolutely wonderful documentary. Guys, please do check out Last Call, the Shutdown of New York City Bars on VOD very soon. And please stay tuned for the sequel. I can't wait to see it. Hopefully you'll come back on and talk about it then, Johnny.
Sure, yeah. This was fun. And yeah, as long as you have that Star Trek memorabilia behind you, yeah, we're good to go.
Excellent. I'll keep it up just for you. Sir, just before we do let you go, though, this gets played out later on the radio. What tune would you like to hear coming out of this interview for the radio version of the broadcast?
Since this film takes place mostly in Queens, if it's possible, Nas's "It Ain't Hard to Tell" off the Illmatic album, which is his first album, that would be great if that's possible. Nas's "It Ain't Hard to Tell."
Thank you very much, Johnny. If you're listening on the radio now, please enjoy Nas's. Sorry, you see, I'm such a professional. I've forgotten the track name already.
Oh, It Ain't Hard to Tell.
It Ain't Hard to Tell by Nas. Here it goes. On video, of course, I'll just be standing around like a fool, but that's fine. I don't mind that. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Johnny. It's been a real blast. I do really love the documentary. I can't wait for the sequel. No problem, Doc. Anytime. Thank you very much for watching at home. I've been Doug Squee. That was my show. And please, guys, remember, in a world where you can be absolutely anything, please be kind.